This is Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app. Now, live from the Matt Blatt Kia Studios.
Oh, what an attack! Whoa, what a move!
Here's Josh Hennig.
Thursday night football tonight. Getting you ready for Eagles Cowboys. 97.3 ESPN. Text board is open, 609-403-0973. To get on the conversation right here on 97.3 ESPN. Of course, every Thursday we talk NFL and fantasy football with Andy McNamara, Sportsnet, coming up just about 15 minutes from right now. Don't forget, Thursday night football, you have the Panthers and you have the Falcons. Should be a lot of points scored tonight. Catch all the action starting at 8 o'clock right here on 97.3 ESPN. It's been a busy day in the NFL, though. Eagles news popping left and right all over the place. Let's get you updated on some of it. Jeff Mosher, you'll catch him tomorrow on Football at 4 Inside the Birds podcast, reporting Jalen Reagor will play versus the Dallas Cowboys. It seemed like he was always trending in that direction because when you saw the videos of him practicing this week, every day he's practiced and he's doing things. He's not just there running through the motion or doing agility drills. No, he's catching punts, he's catching passes. So we were hoping that he could return and start getting some reps in. Now, how much he'll play, got to wait and find out. But definitely good news to get Jalen Reagor back in the fold for the Philadelphia Eagles starting this Sunday night. And remember, the injury that he had was to the thumb. That's what he had surgery on. It wasn't an injury to like his knee or his elbow or no. It's an injury that you can recover from and come back from. And worst case scenario, they can always tape it up a little extra hard if you need a little extra, protection. So him returning now allows the Eagles to slide him into that Z receiver slot across from Travis Fulgham. And now your receiving core can be Fulgham, Reagor, and Ward, which by all intents and purposes might be the best Eagles threesome of receivers in years at this point. I mean, think about some of the direct we've had come through here. All the guys dropping balls, all the guys who can't stay healthy on the field. This might be your wide receiver core of the future at this point, right? They're all in their 20s. They're all young. They're all viable NFL options. They all are guys can catch touchdowns, can make big plays. Fulgham and Reagor on the outside bring you just tremendous dimensions to the football game. And then Greg Ward is arguably one of the most underrated slot receivers in the NFL. So Reagor coming back allows the Eagles to go a little bit stronger, go a little bit deeper with the offense. Now, the other news that came out today, and of course you can catch the full Eagles report right now at 97.3 ESPN.com or the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. Lane Johnson, a limited participant at practice. And the reason that's important to keep an eye on is if Lane Johnson tries to play or is on path to play this Sunday, we have a lot of questions to ask about the offensive line. We know that yesterday, Jason Peters was back at practice at left tackle, Mailata at right tackle. As you heard me say yesterday here on 97.3 ESPN, I'm completely and utterly against Jason Peters ever playing left tackle for the Eagles in any circumstance where Jordan Mailata is healthy. But if Lane Johnson does play, there's a possibility that Mailata might be benched. And I get it. There's an attitude that you don't want to, push aside the veteran or not give him opportunity to go out there and play. But I thought the NFL was supposed to be a meritocracy. I thought the NFL was supposed to be about the best players playing. Right now, Jason Peters is not the best player. And honestly, a Lane Johnson that's not at least 90% might not be your best option either. So we will obviously keep an eye on that. Of course, the full injury report up right now at 973ESPN.com. PlaySugarHouse.com text board is open, 609-403-0973. 0973. We'll get to your text in just a moment. 609 403 0973. A lot of football to get to this hour. But I want to address one thing I heard earlier today, and this will come up a little bit later in the show. Mike Gill asked the question. All right, and I will answer the question a little bit later this hour. Mike Gill asked on the Sports Bash today, why do Eagle fans care so much about the Dallas Cowboys and the rivalry with the Cowboys? Coming up a little bit later this hour, I'm going to answer that question, and it's probably going to frustrate some of you or make some of you mad, but that's okay. You can always at me on Twitter at Josh Hennig or shoot up a text board 609-403-0973. But ahead of the Eagles playing the Dallas Cowboys this week, the other news that came out today was Andy Dalton is still in the concussion protocol, and there is a possibility that Mr. DiNucci is going to be playing this week. Yikes. If you're the Dallas Cowboys, first of all, how did you end up with DiNucci as your best option for a backup third-string quarterback? You're telling me there wasn't a better college quarterback you could have found off the scrap heap than Brett DiNucci? Like, come on, man. I mean, for goodness sake, the guy played at 2 different colleges as well. He had trouble getting on the field at Pittsburgh, and then he had to go to James Madison to finish out his career. You're telling me that I'm supposed to, if I'm the owner of the Dallas Cowboys, and Mike McCarthy turns to me and says, that Brett DiNucci guy, he's a pretty good quarterback. I'm looking at him like, sorry, what? Unless he's Tony Romo, I have no idea what you're talking about. Which I doubt that he is, because Tony Romo is the exception to the rule, not the actual commonality. And listen, if you're the Eagles going against DiNucci this week, you better blow them out like 30-10. You got to stop playing down the level of your opponents. We talked about this yesterday on Game Night with Dave Weinberg. You check out the podcast at 973ESPN.com about how you got to stop playing to the level of your opponents. You got to stop leveling out with your competition. You got to go all in and take them all out. If you go against a team you're supposed to beat, you need to handle them soundly. I'm not saying go out there and put up style points like it's a college football and you got to earn your keep in the college football playoff and in the rankings. No, I'm just talking about if you're the better team, you need to convincingly win so you can, 1, not have to stress out the rest of the game, and 2, maybe take a couple stars off the field like Carson Wentz in the fourth quarter. Wouldn't it be nice? Carson Wentz has been beat up so much this year. He's getting blasted on so many plays. Wouldn't it be nice if Carson Wentz could maybe take a half of the fourth quarter off just to sit on the sidelines and observe and watch? Let Jalen Hurts go out there and take a beating instead of you. Just a thought. Just a thought. It would be nice. 609-403-0973, the Place Sugar House.com. Text board 609-403-0973. Reminder coming up, Andy McNamara, Sportsnet, NFL analyst, fantasy sports expert to join us coming up about 6 minutes from now. Talk more NFL and your fantasy football weekend. Game Night being brought to you by Matt Black Kia. Matt Black Kia wants to get you approved today. That's Matt Black Kia on the Black Horse Pike in Egg Harbor Township. Let's get to your text now, 609-403-0973. 609-403-0973. Texter says, is Goddard and Jeffrey playing? So, Alshon Jeffrey, these are two totally different situations, so I'm going to answer them separately. So, Alshon Jeffrey did not participate at practice again. He apparently is dealing with this calf issue. The Eagles have been very aloof and nondescript about it. I tend to believe that the calf issue is probably some sort of domino effect of maybe he was overly favoring the foot, or maybe he was stepping wrong because he's not used to stepping on that foot and running at full speed. So maybe he strained or pulled or overextended that calf muscle. Will he play? I'm venturing to say probably not. I think the Eagles are not going to play him at all until after the bye week. Because number one, I think that there's a part of the team that would like to get rid of him. I think there's some people in the Eagles organization that feel a little bit of a buyer's remorse when it comes to giving him that contract extension a couple of years ago after the Super Bowl. And number two, I think the calf issue is a little bit more involved and complicated than just a normal calf issue, because a guy like Jeffrey, he's not known for his speed. He's not known for his bursts off the line of scrimmage. It's not his game. He's a possession receiver who can go get jump balls. So for him to be out missing time, it's got to be serious. This calf issue has to be something pretty legitimate. Now, Dallas Goedert, a completely different situation than Jeffrey. He was on the short-term injured reserve. They activated him to practice a couple days ago. So he has been practicing for the last 2 days with the Eagles. We saw him catching passes at practice yesterday. He was again at practice today. Now, he's not listed on the injury report because he's not actively on the roster. He's still in that kind of purgatory where they have this, when you go on a short-term IR, they can activate you to practice for 21 days. And after the 21 days expire, then you have to make a decision whether to put him on the roster, 53-man roster actively, or to put him back on injured reserve. You could bring him back before, you could activate him before. I would say right now it's probably a little more than 50-50, just because of the fact that Dallas Goedert spoke to the media today, so that tells you that they believe he's going to be back sooner or later. They don't make guys available to the media if they're completely unhealthy. And number two, I think there's a part of the Eagles that would like to get as many players back as possible before the bye to kind of get everybody some reps together in real game action. So there's your little update on all those fronts. Andy McNamara coming up next with more updates on fantasy football, the NFL, and more here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN FM and the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. It's for free and is powered by First Bank of Seattle City.
You're listening to Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
More NFL talk now here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN each and every Thursday night. We talk with Andy McNamara from Sportsnet. A little NFL, a little fantasy football, and more here on 97.3 ESPN as all guests. He appears on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Andy, how you doing on this Thursday night?
Oh, Josh, I'm doing good, man. Tonight, I feel like the last couple of weeks, the Thursday nighters have kind of been, stinkers, right? They've been, or at least less exciting going in.
Well, the one week we didn't have Thursday night at all. Well,
that's it, too, right? Yeah, we had the Tuesday, and then it was supposed to be a Thursday, then it got flipped to Sunday, and then it was back and forth, right? So tonight, though, we got a lot of, whether it's fantasy football or regular, we got a lot of weapons going tonight. I'm excited.
We do. So let's get to the Thursday night stuff. First and foremost, Christian McCaffrey will not play tonight.
Right.
So whether somebody's in a year-long league with him or whether somebody is in a DFS situation, what do you do if McCaffrey's not going tonight?
Yeah, so that is, listen, I'm in this camp. I had Christian McCaffrey. He's now, I got Mike Davis, his handcuff. So that means one more week of Mike Davis, who gets to be an RB1. It's expected that McCaffrey will return next week. So that's fine. Now Davis, the last couple of weeks, the production, it's been a little disappointing, right? It's been a little bit on the decline, but he's still the only option. He's, as far as at running back, he still can catch, he can run, and it's really against that Atlanta defense. He is an absolute must-play tonight, whether it's, for your season-long or for your DraftKings contest.
Now, it's been suggested that because tonight is expected to be a high-scoring game, that if people can get as many people into your lineup as possible who are playing tonight. So outside of the major names, like your Robbie Anderson and Todd Gurley and guys like that, Julio Jones, who are some other guys that you're recommending to people? Maybe they need a last-minute waiver wire grab to add to their roster for tonight.
Yeah, I think if Hayden Hurst is out there, get him in. Quietly has been getting more consistent. I was a little disappointed off his start of the year just because that Atlanta offense traditionally with Austin Hooper targeted the tight end so much. So I was a little disappointed in the start to the year, but Hayden Hurst gradually has been building and building. He's $6,400 in DraftKings. You can get him there. He's still, I think, around the 60 to 65% owned level in most fantasy leagues. So he could still be out there, which is great. For Carolina, just to stick with tight ends, Ian Thomas, don't get cute, guys, okay? Ian Thomas has 2. You know how many catches he has in a game this year? The most? 2, Josh, 2. Not interested. We can't go with Ian Thomas at all. So we're going to avoid him. When we go outside of that, I know Todd Gurley is definitely on the menu for people to look at tonight as the starter, but like really appreciate what he's been able to do. He's like the top end RB2. So if you had any hesitation or concern or for whatever style of fantasy format you're doing, feel good about Todd Gurley. Plus, you look at the Panthers, they've given up the most fantasy points to running backs this year, if you can believe it. So those are 2 guys you definitely want to get in your lineup.
Now, with all that being said, how much do you value the idea, or devalue, shall I say, the idea that, well, Thursday night football is not always dependable. You can't always depend on guys on a Thursday night game because of everything that goes into that. Do you believe that maybe there's a little too much hype going into this? Get everybody in your lineup this week because it's a Thursday night.
And you know what? It's a fair comment. We've seen that multiple times in the past. It sometimes goes one of 2 ways, right? It can be a little sloppier on defense and everything gets lit up, or it can be more of a clampdown. I think it really depends on the matchup. And when you look at these 2 teams, if anything's going to be sloppy, it's going to be the defense. So I think this does really light it up. Like maybe somebody as well you want to get in a little bit more under the radar, Russell Gage with Atlanta, who had a nice stretch of targets earlier in the year. And after a couple-week blip, has popped back up in DraftKings last week, 11.4, 10.5 in PPR the week before that. So he's starting to climb. That might be a nice contrarian play as well. But yeah, like if I'm looking at this game, and you're right, Thursday night, anything can happen. But this, to me, if anything's going to be sloppy, it's going to be the defenses. And I just see this as a fun sling it. How about Teddy Bridgewater too, huh? Like he's turned into much more of a game manager. I've been pretty impressed with him.
Bridgewater is interesting because I remember when he first came out of college, all the arguments about, you had the one camp that said he wasn't physically built for the NFL because of his hand size and his frame. And there was another group of people who said this guy could be a franchise quarterback. And obviously he had the injury and his whole career got derailed. But it's nice to see him being successful with a team that's giving him a full deck of cards to work with in his return. Yeah,
I'm totally with you. And I wasn't quite sure what to expect. And what gave me hope going into this year is what he did in his time filling in for Drew Brees last year. He looked good. Right now, granted, you have Michael Thomas to throw to, you had Alvin Kamara. But in Carolina, he has turned Robbie Anderson. And boy, if you get away from the Jets, good things happen apparently, right? Like Robbie Anderson, just the fantasy tease. He would tease you all the time. He's helped turn Robbie Anderson into a legit star. You got a true 1-2 receiver punch in Moore and Anderson. And you can't just put it on the talent of the receiver. Someone's got to get him the ball. I've been very impressed overall with what Teddy Bridgewater has. And I think where before, like the hand size wearing the glove and all that, maybe it was more of a dink and dunk type guy, which he can still do. But I think we have to start elevating him a little bit more than just the game manager type. I think he's in that tier above that.
Andy McNamara joining us here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Make sure you follow him on Twitter at AndyMC81 for all your fantasy sports and NFL news and information. Let's start with the running backs for Sunday, Andy. Let's jump over to there because there's 2 running backs who specifically did not practice today. That'd be Aaron Jones and Joe Mixon. I know a lot of people were going out there with your recommendation and others saying that, hey, look, no Joe Mixon, go get Giovanni Bernard. No Aaron Jones, go get Jamal Williams. Well, guess what? It might be an opportunity. People have to keep hanging on to those 2 guys. What do you think about this situation?
Yeah, and with Joe Mixon, I was expecting him to probably be back, and that's something to track. Like if Joe Mixon suits up in any capacity, you don't love it, but you'd have to go with Mixon over Bernard. And really, Giovanni Bernard's still only in PPR, folks. Okay, if you're even in a half, I would fade on him. Standard, absolutely not. But if you're in a PPR situation, you look at Joe Burrow. He targeted him a lot against the Browns. The week before, he was double-digit fantasy points as well against Indiana. And we know Tennessee's defense is really tough, but they have given up the 16th most fantasy points to running backs, so sort of in the middle. And there might just not be that many options. A nice little dink and dunk type of thing for Joe Burrow, who can also, as we know, just absolutely swing it all over. And by the way, they do nothing but throw the ball all the time in Cincinnati. So he's going to have opportunity. So I like that. And yeah, for Jamal Williams, he's the obvious handcuff. A.J. Dillon's done nothing with Green Bay so far, which is you'd think they'd work him in a little bit more at this point. So I would say you probably look, if I was to rank them, I would go Jamal Williams if Aaron Jones doesn't play, and then Bernard.
You mentioned about the Tennessee defense. Let me ask you about that real quick, because this Bengals team is very interesting this year because, Joe Burrow is having a phenomenal year. He's probably going to be the offensive rookie of the year. You're talking about a team with A.J. Green and Tyler Boyd and T. Higgins and Bernard and Mixon. And it seems like they have a lot of mouths to feed. But from week to week, they all seem to still get some pretty consistent level of production. Has that surprised you?
You know what? On the surface, it would, except that all this Zach Taylor, the head coach of the Bengals, all he does is throw the ball. Like too much. Like this is a case where I think Cincinnati and Joe Burrow's the real deal. My goodness. The offensive line, they lost two more starters. A couple backups were filling in for starters in the Browns game last week. So that offensive line is really, really hurting for Cincinnati. But they just throw the ball. Like let's look at the attempts. Joe Burrow has the most pass attempts of anyone in the National Football League. Okay, like going into last week, I'm not sure what it is now. He was 8th. He threw for over 400, so I bet you he's higher than that now. And he gets sacked the most because the O-line stinks and he holds onto the ball sometimes too much. So, like the pass attempts, 47, 39, 30, 36, 44, 61. That's how often he just keeps throwing it. So, if you're throwing it that often, there's going to be enough ball to go around to make a lot of guys fantasy relevant as long as they're catching it.
Now, speaking of the ball going around, the Green Bay Packers, their offense got back on track, but Davante Adams took a huge chunk of that offense in that game. Robert Tonyan, he was upgraded to a full participant at practice today. Now, he hasn't been 100% this year, but his production has obviously gone down in the last couple of weeks. So what do you recommend for Robert Tonyan owners?
Well, and that's the thing. With Davante Adams, the target share, wow. Like, it is all Adams, and that's about it. The fact that he's still not at 100% does concern me, and the Green Bay medical staff are overly cautious, so it could be a recommendation to sort of keep him lower. Against Minnesota, like if this was next week against San Francisco, I would really fade on Minnesota. I think there's a path for him, and let's face it, that tight end group in fantasy football is so thin. Who else you going to get, right? Who else you got? And I got one for you. It was in my waiver wire article on Tuesday. It comes out for Sportsnet.ca every Tuesday, and my sleeper one Saturdays. Is Trey Burton of the Colts. I'm biting, Josh. I wanted to hold off, but boy, Jack Doyle's just been shoved to the side. Mo Alley Cox, injured or not, is back to the third on the depth chart. They're throwing it to Burton. T.Y. Hilton's not getting any looks. So if you have a chance to get Burton, I would play him over Tonyan for this week until Tonyan gets healthy. I still think he's going to be a big part of the offense once he's back to 100%.
Yeah, and don't forget, Trey Burke was with Frank Reich in Philadelphia, so there's a little familiarity there as well with him. You mentioned tight ends. I know a big question in the fantasy sports world this week. I got to ask it to you. Rob Gronkowski, fool's gold, or is it legit?
Boy, well, here's the thing. Short term, I think you roll with him. Now, Rob is banged up again, right? Okay, he's not at 100% going into this week. He does have a questionable designation going in, so we got to track that, of course. But you look at back-to-back week touchdowns, okay? Exactly 8 targets in each of those games. That is rising. You're playing a Giants team for this week. Hell yes, you get Rob Gronkowski into your lineup. I think everybody can eat there. The problem to me is going to come when Antonio Brown comes in. What is that offense? What is that target share going to switch to? How much? Who wins out? Who loses? Who doesn't get affected? That's the big unknown. But for this week anyway, against the Giants, that's an absolute smash spot. You can go with Gronk pretty confidently there.
Let's check out a couple other teams here. We know that Michael Thomas is back at practice for the Saints, but Emmanuel Sanders, he has COVID-19. He'll be missed at least the next 2 games, it looks like. So what do you recommend people do with Saints pickups they grabbed when both of those guys were out?
So it's a case where if we look at, let's say, Traquan Smith, who is the body type, the replacement for Michael Thomas as far as those type of routes because of body size and speed, et cetera. So I don't necessarily see him benefiting from the Sanders outage. I do still go back to Jared Cook. Now, this again, he is a not the dynamic guy maybe he used to be a little while ago. He needs a touchdown. He's got those the last 2 weeks. He's going to get 3, 4, 5 targets, and he's going to kind of catch it and fall down. So you're going to need a touchdown out of him, but Jared Cook consistently gets red zone work. So I think that's still a case where you can go to him and look at it. I would really fade on Traquan Smith, and then it's Kamara. So I think if Michael Thomas is back and ready to go, that, we talked about the target share for Devontae Adams. I just see Drew Brees just funneling everything his way.
We've seen that Keenan Allen has gotten way more targets in recent weeks thanks to the Justin Herbert jumping back in the lineup. But that's also seemed to affect the running back situation with the Chargers because we're seeing an uptick in targets for Allen and Mike Williams. But even with Eckler out, it's not like Justin Jackson is getting any more target shares. Are you concerned about where the Chargers offense is going, considering that it seems like only 2 guys are getting targets?
Yeah, well, you know what? Joshua Kelly, just a colossal fantasy disappointment, considering what was expected if an Eckler injury happened, and he was sort of the new guy in. Justin Jackson was banged up last week. So if he's healthy, I still like him as the back to go to. You're right, though. Keenan Allen's getting a ton of targets, ton of work, obviously. But for Justin Jackson, it's still a case where, when he was fully healthy before their bye, he got 15 rushing attempts. You can toss the odd ball to him as well. I still think this is something, once again, you got to track. He's healthy right now, but make sure nothing pops up. If he's good, that's the running back to go to. We just have to lower our expectations for him, right? He's not going to be an RB1, obviously. He's probably going to be a real low-end RB2, probably RB3. If you look at maybe for bye week consideration, maybe he's a flex guy for you. And if you keep your expectations for him in that vein versus a Denver Broncos defense that isn't what it used to be, I think you're going to be pretty satisfied with what he gives you.
There's a lot of people out there who own Buffalo Bills players. The offense has been a dumpster fire the last couple of weeks. Are you hanging on to these guys, or are you cutting bait?
You know what? If it's Cole Beasley, I'm hanging on, man. Cole Beasley has been an absolute rock star. And Josh, I feel like I'm the only one talking about when I'm on with you or on my shows here. Cole Beasley. I know we all think little Cole Beasley zipping around, and who cares? This dude has averaged 14.7 fantasy points since week 2. Okay? He got 12 targets last week. Now, that was when John Brown was out. John Brown is going to be returning. But you play New England, who is just they're all out of sorts. They're free falling here. I'm not scared of the Patriots. And so if I'm looking at it, okay, Josh Allen, I think this could be, as strange as it sounds, could be a nice get-right game for the Bills, which is strange to say after playing the Jets and you kind of sputtered. I think they start getting back on track here. And if I'm looking at somebody as a cheaper DraftKings play who still gets overlooked, or you need in your lineup, he's still available in 45% of Yahoo and ESPN leagues, folks. Still, if you're PPR, get him in there. Cole Beasley, I'm very high on. Diggs, again, if you got him, you're going to play him. If you got John Brown, you're going to play them. But this is a case where until you see that offense start to jump up more and not necessarily rely on sort of the check down to Cole Beasley, you might want to lower your expectations there as well.
Andy McNamara joining us here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Make sure to follow him on Twitter at AndyMC81 for all your NFL and fantasy sports analysis. Saving the best for last, Andy. Eagles, Sunday Night Football versus the Cowboys. It's a great matchup, but there's a problem here. Jalen Reagor, he's going to play this week. Dallas Goedert is kind of a 50-50 thing. He hasn't been activated to the official roster yet, but he's practicing. Lane Johnson. We don't know what's going on with him. So the offensive line's in flux. No Miles Sanders. It looks like Boston Scott's going out there. What do you do with a team with so many question marks? And next week is their bye week.
Yeah. And that's sort of the question where if it's me and you're not 100% sure on Dallas Goedert or anybody, you wait. You get the extra week. You do what the Minnesota Vikings did with Dalvin Cook, right? You give him the extra week. You go, it's not like you're in a hot chase for the division where you got to put up 12 wins. You're in pretty good shape right now. So I think you can be a little more cautious. Jalen Reagor, he doesn't, as far as fantasy-wise, I wasn't interested in him when he was drafted. Not coming out, not this year. I'm not a fan of his as far as what he can do to the fantasy world, especially that first game back after a lengthy absence as a rookie. So this is a case where, again, like you said, we got to track. Now, if you're going into your Sunday 1:00 kickoff and still we're not sure if Dallas Goedert's going to play, for example, or who's going to play, who's going to not on that Philly team, you're going to have some tough decisions to make because time is going to be of the essence. But right now, if Goedert doesn't play, the stack I love for DSS is Carson Wentz and Richard Rodgers. I think that is an absolute smash gem of a stack spot. You can put him in. You get the contrarian points with Rodgers. You get Carson Wentz, who say what you want about him in real-life football. The dude's been a star in fantasy for all he's had to put up with all those injuries. I love that spot there. Those would be the two that I would really go to. And again, yeah, if you got Boston Scott, look pretty good. So I think, again, Boston Scott's going to be a must-start as well.
All right, Andy, got any recommendations, showdowns, DraftKings stuff going for tonight or this weekend?
Well, you know what's really cool? So on DraftKings, on the sports book, there's a free 10K DraftKings and Major League Eating Halloween candy bowl pool. Oh, no, I can say it. Halloween candy bowl pool. So they're having like Joey Chestnut, the hot dog guy, right? Joey Chestnut's going to be in it. They got a whole bunch of other guys, and there's a free pool. So if you go to DraftKings.com or sportsbook.draftkings.com, and you can bet on who you think is going to win the Major League Eating Halloween Candy Bowl. It's brought to you by DraftKings. You win $10,000 free to play. So that's pretty cool outside of your usual, DK fantasy football plays for over the weekend.
Now, really quick, and maybe this is not an answer that you have, but in COVID, you can't have a bunch of people in one place, right? That's the whole thing. So are they doing this on a Zoom call with each other? And what happens if the Zoom call freezes? How do we know that someone didn't eat more or less food? This feels like a very risky proposition competition going on here.
Well, it's an excellent question. Now, it is going to be held in Las Vegas. Everybody's going to be there at Beer Park, which is right outside the Strip at the Bellagio Fountain. So it's going to be an outside, spread out, everybody's going to be able to see what everybody's doing type of thing. So it's the I can only name Joey Chestnut, but apparently it is that 6 of the world's top-ranked eaters are going to be there for this Halloween candy eating contest. So I don't know what type of candy. Is it going to be Tootsie Roll? Are we talking Smarties? I don't know. It's going to be pretty interesting, I think.
All right, well, there you go. You got that pool. I know they also got the pro football pick'em pools every week there on the DraftKings Sportsbook. So a lot of fun options for people to get a little extra involved in their weekend with the DraftKings Sportsbook. He's Andy McNamara. For more recommendations like that and more, follow him on Twitter at AndyMC81. As all guests, he appeared on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Andy, you the man.
Oh, thanks, Josh. Talk to you soon, bud.
Josh Hennig here on 97.3 ESPN here on Game Night, being brought to you by GMS Law. Make the right call. With 4 convenient locations to serve you, visit them online at gmslaw.com. We'll get back to your text messages next. 609-403-0973. That's 609-403-0973. Get on the conversation right here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN FM and on the free 97.3 ESPN mobile app, powered by First Bank of Sea City.
Now, more Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
Josh Hennig here, 97.3 ESPN. We'll get back to the PlaySugarHouse.com text board in just a moment. Of course, PlaySugarHouse.com. Place your legal sports bets at PlaySugarHouse.com. Sign up now and they'll match your first deposit up to $250. Must be 21 in order to play. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. 609-403-0973. 0973, theplaysugarhouse.com. Text sports 609-403-0973. Tom from the Village chimes in. Says, I don't think Hurts should be used for gimmicks. They only dress 2 quarterbacks, and that line doesn't protect Wentz very well. I'd hate to see both quarterbacks go down in the same game with injuries. That's Tom in the Village. Well, Tom, a couple things. One, the Eagles explicitly said all along that they were looking at Hurts for those type of plays to kind of be used like a weapon, similar to ways like, Taysom Hill and other quarterbacks around the league get used for different roles as well. So this has been part of their plan all along. I do agree with you that dressing 2 quarterbacks does make it very risky, because if either one of them goes down, you're put into a really, really difficult position. We know that the emergency quarterback in that situation would be Greg Ward, because Greg Ward is a guy that played quarterback in college, and now he's a slot receiver, and he's a darn good one in the NFL, slot receiver. So don't think they're completely out of the woods, but I would say that, at least for the Eagles' perspective, they think the risk is worth the reward, which is getting something out of Jalen Hurts that they just didn't have last year. So, but I understand where you're coming from, Tom. I understand that the perception is, listen, you got to protect your quarterbacks, so the most important position on the field. You don't want to put them in position to get hurt more than they already are. And I understand that, but I think that we also have to accept the fact that this was the Eagles' plan all along with these guys. So I'm just not surprised, and I'm not too worried about it, because I think that Wentz and Hurts have shown you up to this point that they've both done a good job at not taking a lot of damage. Even when they're getting hit, they're not getting blasted from the side or from a bad angle. They're usually getting hit in a way that the damage is not really hitting them in a way that's causing them to get injured. So that's at least a small amount of positivity to come out of that. All right. So I'm probably going to make some of you mad out there, because I know how fans can be. And while I love you guys and I appreciate the passion and I thoroughly enjoy it, when I run into people out in public, obviously with COVID, it's a lot harder to meet new people. But, in the past, when I've met people at the gym or at the, out and about on the town, I enjoy listening to different people and talking to different people who are different types of fans. But Mike Gill asked a question earlier today on the Sports Bash. Mike Gill asked, why do Eagle fans care so much about the Cowboys? And why does Cowboys week, Dallas week, matter more to Eagle fans than the other 2 rivalries, which are obviously much more significant regional rivalries? Your rivalry with Washington and your rivalry with the New York Giants geographically has a lot to do with, close proximity. It kind of fits more into what one would think is a rivalry. I mean, even the Steelers and the Eagles don't really have a real rivalry because they're in different conferences. Well, my answer to that question is this. The reason why there are Eagle fans who care more about Dallas week and look at the Dallas rivalry with more passion and intensity than the other rivalries is simply this. There is a segment of the fan base, typically older folks who had to live through the 70s and the 80s and the 90s years of the Cowboys. They had to live through whether it's Staubach winning Super Bowls or the Cowboys always being in contention, it seemed like, every year in the 1980s with Danny White and Tony Dorsett in the backfield, or in the 90s with the triplets. There is an attitude of jealousy when it comes to those teams. There's a level of resentment with those teams, that those teams were having success and they were getting shine and they were getting attention, while the Eagles had Rich Kotite, and they couldn't win a playoff game with Buddy Ryan. And it was frustrating for Eagle fans that Dick Vermeil got them to the Super Bowl, couldn't get them back, and then he left football altogether. There is a level of frustration, whether conscious or unconscious, in a fan base that feels like it's been kicked and beaten down like a black sheep. And I think the reason why the Eagle fans look at Dallas week with such zest and importance is because of the fact that there is a level of resentment, whether conscious or subconscious, toward the Dallas Cowboys that why did they get all the popularity? Why did they get all the shine? Why did they get all the great players? Why are they always seemingly better than my team? And there's always this attitude of, we're going to get the Cowboys. You know, Buddy Ryan was famous for saying, listen, we don't beat anybody all year long. At least it's going to be Dallas. Andy Reid saying, the only thing that matters every year is beating Dallas. And I understand that you want to beat one of your divisional rivals. And I'm not belittling that at all. But to not admit that there is a contingent of the fan base that is resentful and jealous of the Cowboys because of their success from the 70s through the 90s, 30 years of, if not championship caliber teams, playoff caliber teams year in and year out, while many of those years the Eagles were never in the same conversation, whether it was in the 70s or parts of the 80s or parts of the 90s. The Eagles were never in those conversations with the Cowboys. They were always the other team in the division. In the 80s, 3 of the best coaches in football all coached in the NFC East. It was Landry in Dallas, it was Bill Parcells in New York, and then it was Joe Gibbs down in Washington. And it wasn't until the Eagles got Buddy Ryan that they had a coach of any similar pedigree. But as I mentioned, Buddy Ryan never won a playoff game. So there's a level of resentment that the Cowboys were America's team getting all this attention and all this shine while the Eagles were just over there kicking rocks for part of their existence. And that's why there's a more passionate attitude toward the Cowboys. That's why there's more of a passionate mentality, because whether it's conscious or subconscious, people by nature don't like it when people that they don't want to succeed. We all have biases. We all have things that trigger us when it comes to our daily lives. If you work with somebody and you don't like them, you want your job to do well, but you don't want that specific person to do well. So you love football, but you just don't love it when the Cowboys are playing football, kind of thing. Or, for example, it's when you look at a situation like it's going on in the political world. Everybody's taking sides, and everything has become a you versus me, us versus them kind of mentality. And where does that mentality come from? Well, it comes from sports. It comes from fandom. It comes from an environment where people draw lines and they put their foot in the ground and they go on and compete. And for Eagle fans, there is a long history of being the abused other sibling in the division for a 30-year period. And that's why, to answer that question, why do Eagle fans care so much about Dallas week? It's because nobody likes to be picked on for not being the cool kid in school. And for a lot of people, just because the Cowboys haven't been successful for the last 25 years, just because the Eagles and the Giants have more Super Bowls than the Cowboys have had. In fact, the Eagles and the Giants in the last 20 years have combined for the same number of championships that the Cowboys had in the 90s. 3. But for a lot of people, the scars still go deep. The scars are still there from all those years of being picked on and punched and prodded and made fun of. And that's part of nature, is it not? If you're the underdog, if you're the person who's not the most popular in school, if you're the person who gets overlooked a lot, there comes a day where you want to punch back. You want to punch that bully in the face. You want to show him who's boss. You want to show up at that class reunion and show everybody that you're the cool guy now and you're no longer the guy to be picked on. That's why Eagle fans feel the way they do. Josh Hennig here, Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Don't forget, Thursday football tonight. Falcons versus Panthers. Tomorrow on Game Night, don't miss out. Ross Dellinger, college football reporter, joins us. And Friday football picks tomorrow, Game Night.